United Nations plays a very important role for humanity, especially when it comes to aid and also international trade. But when it comes to preventing wars, peacekeeping, upholding human rights, or defending democracies, the track record is really bad. And it's quite widely accepted that it's a failure in this area. That's why some people had this idea that we should instead have also a complementary organization consisting of only democratic nations. So this video is about this concept. In the first part, I will go into why we need it, what kind of a promise it has, and also what kind of a challenges this concept has. In the second part, I will go into details on my own opinions and how would I actually structure such an organization. So is the criticism against United Nations justified? Because let's be honest, they have an impossibly difficult job. When we go through the so-called failures, we have to start probably with Rwanda. The Rwandan genocide, UN was active in the region and have not done anything to prevent it. They just let it happen. Then in Bosnia, in Srebrenica, it's even worse. The UN troops were there. They more or less pushed children and women to the hands of the Serbian militia that just slaughtered them. Then when we look at the sexual misconduct allegations in Congo, in Haiti, in Cambodia, or corruption in Iraq in the oil to food program, these are examples that goes on and on. More recently, the inability to intervene in Ukraine, inability to intervene in Syria, the mess in Libya or also Iraq, or the ongoing Israeli-Palestine conflict, how the Chinese mistreat their Uyghurian citizens. The list is very long and it's very hard to defend United Nations track record in this area. But what is the reason behind this failure? On one hand, you have organizational topics. For instance, the leader of United Nations, the General Secretary, is certainly not selected to that position because he is the best man for the job. But no, it's just a result of some political negotiations between countries. Or also it's known that United Nations is a highly ineffective organization, very bloated, and also there are a lot of allegations of corruption. But these kind of things can be fixed and it's actually a bit normal for such a highly political organization. But the real problem lies at its members and also structure. You have to see 35% of the countries in the world and 37% of the population live in dictatorships. A further 20% of the countries are called so-called hybrid regimes. So it's a hybrid between democracy and dictatorship. 31% are so-called flow democracies, and only 12% are the real democracies. So this is the world we live in today. And United Nations mirror this. That means that dictatorships and very, very flow democracies are the majority. Even worse, 2 of the Security Council's veto-yielding members are dictatorships. So in an organization where these dictatorships and so on are almost the majority or have huge powers like veto powers, you cannot expect them to have moral clarity to intervene for democracies, for human rights. So this is the reason why United Nations can never be reformed to actually fulfill duties really effectively. So what is the promise behind this new organization? Basically, the inspiration comes from the European Union and also NATO. European Union was very successful in its expansion, bringing prosperity and democracy to Central and Eastern Europe. Similarly, NATO brought security to that region. But because these 2 organizations are not really, you cannot really expand them globally. We see that already both organizations come to the limits of their expansion. So a new organization could actually fulfill a similar role, not exactly the same, but similar role in a global scale by bringing democratic countries together and bringing prosperity and safety, security to the whole world. There are several advantages, at least theoretical advantages, for having such a new organization. One is that These countries will have shared values. They believe in democracy and they believe in human rights. There will be less discussion, less obstruction. Secondly, theoretically at least, they can have a huge financial and military clout. These are some of the most powerful countries in the world. And an organization that could bring these countries together and make them cooperate better would actually be a huge force for good. And it could be in topics like climate change, but also trade, and also, of course, security. However, there are also very serious challenges. For one, it's about United States' role. Currently, the United States is the leader of democracies and actually shoulders most of the burden. So this is a different role. In this new organization, it would be much more shared responsibility. So United States would need to give up power, and in return, the other democracies, big democracies, would need to step up and also shoulder more of the burden. So a new role sharing. And I think the time might be right for that, but it's still a huge change. Secondly, which country to take in? I mean, do you only exclude dictatorships or only focus on the really free democracies? Who to let in on which criteria could be already a huge breaking point even before such an organization starts. And lastly, okay, they are democracies, but that doesn't mean that they always agree. We know in Iraq war there was huge disagreement. Iran nuclear program, how to deal with that, or also climate change. I mean, on some important topics, there is certainly no agreement between these democratic countries. So these are some of the challenges that such an organization would face already in the beginning.